This is an age of speed, a nervous age that keeps our emotions stirred. All of us, young or old, schooled or illiterate, are endowed by nature with the ability to live a life filled with many kinds of emotions. But whether we will show them in an uncontrolled outburst, whether we will act in some antisocial way, whether we swallow our upsets or deny them even to ourselves, we cannot do away with them. They are part of our personality. We inherited many confusing and conflicting ideas about emotions, some of which still linger on. But today, people in distress need not conceal their emotional problems anymore. They can find help and counsel from a new group of specialists: psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, and the modern religious counselors. In this film, we're not concerned with clinically disordered emotions, but with everyday experiences involving emotions. For these, we must start at the beginning, with the newborn child. Welcome, young man. Welcome to life. For you, as for all children, life begins as an emotional experience. Obviously, this new and strange world comes as a shock to you. Though just 1 minute old, you are a personality with a name, an identity by which we recognize you as an individual. Look at him. This new individual is well equipped for all the physiological functions of living and for emotional responses to events around him. From his first breath, he is capable of being happy or unhappy and can make others around him happy or unhappy. How he learns to use his inborn capacities will largely depend on what this new world offers him, how he, as a child, will experience his relations with others. For emotions are not learned deliberately like skills or facts. The baby will develop them through living with others, by responding to those who handle him, speak to him, comfort him, or provoke him, by reacting emotionally to those he sees and touches, to those whose songs he hears. And so as the child grows, he will learn many new things, some from books and teachers, but probably much more from trying, testing, accepting, and rejecting. In other words, from living with others. From the beginning, the child literally feels his way through life, loving, hating, worrying, trying to find a place for himself in this new world of grown-ups. From day to day, the basic emotional responses tie in with one new experience after another, with cue after cue, with the child's own responses to new situations and new cues. As an example, an infant experiences a strong emotional shock when the pediatrician gives him his first injection. Several signals may connect with this unpleasant experience, such as the specific odor of the office, the color of the doctor's jacket, the sight of his instruments. Later, when the mother brings the child to a doctor's office, the mere smell of it may provoke the same responses that were part of the earlier experience of pain. And these in turn may release emotional responses of crying and rebelling in defense against the anticipated pain. As the child matures, she can tell herself that the visit to the doctor's office is important for her health. Therefore, she can soothe her responses by reasoning, which means that she has learned to control an emotional reaction through signals given to herself by reasoning. In his daily routine, the child continuously learns about life. Memories of many of his early experiences may fade and seem forgotten, but they are rarely completely erased. Although he may not be conscious of them, they are often operating in his later life as the forgotten childhood. Where a young infant's drive has been kept low, where parents paid attention to his early requests, the child easily progresses to the next developmental step, exploration, striving to achieve some gratifications by himself. This struggling to achieve gratifications by himself is part of the preparation for later life. But even at the height of achievements, it will be the childhood patterns of his emotional experiences that will largely govern his relations with others. That's why it is so important that he learns to manage emotions honestly as he develops physically. Where did a helpless infant get this capacity for emotions? Just as he could breathe, eat, and digest food from the time he opened his eyes, he could also respond with emotions. Let's try to visualize what goes on inside the human body when pain or danger threatens. The adrenal glands release hormones into the blood. The heart pumps the blood, carrying these chemical messengers to all parts of the body. In the liver, they release an emergency ration of stored sugar into the bloodstream. The heartbeat accelerates. The blood pressure goes up. Breathing becomes faster. From this point of view, we may describe emotions as primitive biological reactions to painful or threatening stimulations from outside, intense responses involving the whole body. From the very beginning, the human baby is equipped with this emotional defense setup. As his experiences grow, his emotional responses become more varied. Here is a boy just beginning to explore the world, with curiosity, with eagerness. But the road of exploration is not smooth. He is unable to handle his blocks, and so he's frustrated and disturbed. Sister's too young to help. Here comes Mother. The toy hammer is a good release for his emotional and physical reactions, and soon the blocks are forgotten. Someday he'll be able to meet such frustrating incidents without crying. From day to day, his play experiences are increasing, not without occasional upsets. These are his sister's crayons. And here's Lynn to claim her right.
Don't come on, you bad, bad boy.
This is a familiar scene and a very significant one. Observe how Lynn uses words to express her emotions. That's quite a step forward from crying or hitting.
Bad, bad boy.
Sometimes grown-ups find a child's sincere expression of emotions shocking, and so may tend to undermine the child's emotional sincerity.
Lynn, dear, play with your brother. Come on, darling. Play with your brother.
I don't like him.
Well, Lynn, you don't really mean that. You love your brother, of course.
I don't like him.
Oh, be nice to brother. He's our baby.
Send him on my way.
Lynn is jealous of the baby and shows it. No use telling her that she must love Toby. Right now, she wants to get rid of the baby as competition for Mother's love. Mother's insistence that she must love Toby not only confuses her, but increases her jealousy. Another example. This one about learning and unlearning signals that cause emotional upsets. Patsy is scared of dogs, and so's her mother. Patsy's fear is strengthened by the examples of her mother's uneasiness. Whenever she comes out, there's a threatening animal on the street. Gradually, she withdraws from playing outside. One day, her father comes home from the office with a present. She's eager to see it. But out of the box comes a stuffed dog. No, she doesn't like dogs, not even stuffed dogs. It may take a long time for Patsy to become friendly to dogs. That is, to unlearn her fear of dogs. But not all so-called childish upsets are confined to little children. For instance, a youngster may fall back to bedwetting in protest against a new baby. Another may revert to thumb-sucking or nail-biting when facing an unpleasant or threatening situation, a new teacher, or stern parental demand. Adolescence is an especially sensitive age. Sometimes the fear of new responsibilities makes adolescents act in what we call a childish manner. These excursions to less mature behavior are often indications that some disappointment or pressure is weighing upon the youngsters. Recognizing this, parents, friends, and teachers can help them to overcome their troubles and return to a more mature level. We are getting increasingly aware that the emotional causes sometimes lead to physical discomforts, like in the case of this girl. Taking medicine alone may not cure her. Often a competent physician will decide to call upon a psychiatrist or psychologist to help him probe deeper into the emotional causes of certain ailments. Strong emotions tend to express themselves even when we try to hide or suppress them. When continuously suppressed, they may go underground and may interfere with bodily functions such as digestion or elimination, or they may disturb the heart and circulation, or give rise to recurrent headaches. Symptoms of such ailments are often called psychosomatic. Psychosomatic are such physical disturbances that have emotional causes. Up to now, we've been discussing mostly emotional upsets, but our satisfactions are emotions too. The natural love of parents for children is one of them. The affection of parents for each other. The stirrings of attraction between the young adults. All these and many more are high points of emotional satisfaction. The study of emotions is a complex subject. This film set out only to create an awareness of this problem by showing that we all are born capable of emotions, that we develop emotionally through living with others, that there is no golden rule or magic formula for emotional maturation, that emotions cannot be denied, only suppressed. If we recognize and accept our emotions, if we learn to channel them to useful purposes, they will become the raw materials for the building of healthy personalities, capable of feeling and therefore of living rich and full lives as useful members of society.
Remember how much fun you had in an amusement park when you were a kid? Well, when you're a parent, you live it all over again through the eyes of your child. That's my little girl, Nancy. It's her fun and folly. A treat Alice and I had promised her before sending her on a visit to Grandma's. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to introduce Susie. Nancy would never forgive me. She's made Susie an important part of our family. You know how it is. When a little girl has no brothers or sisters, her doll can become pretty important. And sometimes, so help me, I almost think the girl, I mean the doll, has a personality of her own. Sometimes the upkeep on Susie stretches our family budget. Nancy wants her to have dresses just like she has and make sure Susie shares all the family treats. Well, it is amusing. And of course, we don't spoil her like this all the time. Nancy was only worried about one thing. Would she remember every single bit of excitement so she could tell it all to Grandma? Alice said roller coasters are all right. But she prefers riding in the family car. We both enjoy taking long drives together, and this one had a special purpose. We were on our way to pick up Nancy. She had been with Alice's mother for a week. It seemed a lot longer than that. The house had been so quiet. But we did have Susie to keep us company. With everything that Nancy had to take on the plane, there just hadn't been room for a playmate the size of Susie. Then, less than a half an hour out of town...
Gee, what's up?
Although we were both wearing seatbelts, Alice was badly shaken up. I blame myself for maybe driving a little too fast. You always feel guilty at a time like this, even when it's the other fellow's fault. I'd have to get Alice over to Dr. McAllister right away. Then we discovered something that gave us both a genuine shock. What if this had been Nancy?
I examined both Mr. and Mrs. Norwood and was happy to tell them that apart from a few abrasions and shattered nerves, they had suffered no serious injury. If they hadn't been wearing their seatbelts, however, the verdict would have been different, disastrously different. I thought I was through with my patients when my eyes fell on another casualty. Mr. Norwood was a bit embarrassed until I told him about my work with dolls that had survived car collisions. As a medical consultant for the Institute of Transportation and Traffic Engineering, I examined the dolls that represented children and the dummies that represented adults in a scientific collision staged by the University of California at Los Angeles. Strategically placed cameras covered everything that happened during impact. We were especially interested in what happened to children with and without belts because this subject had not been explored. But even though they were only dolls, and even though these were scientific experiments, we couldn't avoid a feeling of tension and a sense of impending tragedy. For several months, the collision experiments continued at different speeds, at different points of impact, sometimes with the passengers belted, sometimes unbelted. Speeds such as these of 30 and 40 miles an hour may be moderate by today's driving standards, but not to the motorist slammed about against glass and metal. Children should never be allowed to stand on the seat of a car. Sitting tends to restrict body movement generated by the forces of impact to the rear seat. In many cases where the children were not restrained, our diagnosis of probable injuries showed that they would have been killed. Babies held on laps were thrown completely out of the car. Even in the most severe collisions, university findings showed that the 3-year-olds, seated on cushions and restrained by adult belts, came through uninjured. As a result of these experiments, it was found that for 1-year-olds, the anchored harness, or harness secured by passing a seatbelt strap through the loops, was the most effective means of restraining the little ones. We found that infants were safest in bassinets, with the long axis of the bassinet aligned with the longitudinal axis of the car and strapped in this position. We also found that infants or children must never be held on the lap and restrained with the adult's belt, as collision forces tend to crush the child. Perhaps you think a collision can never happen to you, but the children will be safer if you admit that it could and prepare accordingly. I wish that everybody could see these scenes, because I don't believe that anyone who did would ever let the children go riding unrestrained again.
Of course, I had already made up my mind to have the back seat belts installed while the car was in the shop. And we never go anywhere now that we aren't all safely belted. Oh, yes. You're probably wondering about Susie. Dr. McAllister knew where to send us, and now she's as good as new. She may be only a doll, but she's never left out. And that includes a safety belt for Susie.
Many people who would do anything to protect their children do nothing to save them from injury, pain, or death in the motor accidents that can happen at any time. This is a frank appeal to all mothers and fathers. Without restraints, such as safety belts, the rear seat of an automobile in itself is not adequate protection. University research shows that children who will otherwise be killed can live to prove that safety is no accident.